Hey everybody, welcome back to Monroe Live. I'm here with Jordan, and today what we're looking at the electric photographs that they got from somebody who found a Tesla CyberTruck sitting at the side of the road. We never get that opportunity here at Monroe. We look at the side of the road and we just haven't seen one of them laying around. So anyway, what we're looking at here is basically the front suspension. We can see that there's a casting back here and not much else. It looks pretty standard to me. You see anything?
Yeah, I mean, just a few observations. So it looks like a low pressure, either a low pressure, like a permanent mold type of die cast, or a sand casting, right? It's hard to see all the witness marks to get confirmation, but these cross hatches, right, help that casting cool and release from the mold. But the one thing that's indicative to me in looking at this and stating that it is a prototype is, if you look at this, these are the inner and outer tie rods, so the thing that connects to the steering rack underneath the vehicle. So the outboard one, or the OTR, outside tie rod end, this forged aluminum piece, goes into this, which this is the indicative piece of a prototype. This looks like a billet machined piece of steel, right? So why would you do that in a prototype? It's because you can do it off of bar stock. You don't need to have a tool set up to do it. You can put it on a lathe, do a secondary machine pass, and voila, you've got a tie rod.
Yeah, the little flat right here is the wrench flat.
Right.
So at the end of the day, again, this doesn't look extraordinary, this picture. I would suggest that we could see a lot of these different products that are in the marketplace right now that would look very, very similar to this. Go to the next one. Okay, so this is a better view of that same casting. We're looking at the front suspension here. And again, pretty much everything looks pretty conventional. But we did say, or actually Jordan and I were just talking a second ago, we're going to go to the rear in a second, and it's going to be made out of steel. And our speculation on this is that going to a casting is there for SORB, right?
Yeah, it could be a SORB enabler, right? So a lot of OEMs in the front, if you're not familiar with SORB, it's small overlap rigid barrier, where 25% of the vehicle's width is going to contact at, just over 30 miles an hour, a rigid barrier. And so the reason that folks will put, aluminum in the front corner here is because they want this wheel during the impact event to peel away from the vehicle. If this stays rigidly connected to the vehicle, what happens is this whole wheel and tire gets trapped in that wheel envelope, and it starts to load up the hinge pillar going into the occupant home. And so we've seen folks use this as a strategy to help fracture this whole corner node of the suspension and get that out of the path, right? You don't want hard objects, but rather free crush space in an event like that. So it could be that they're doing it for that. Could be lightweighting. Could also be feature integration or a combination therein, but definitely aluminum in the front.
Well, I know that that's the primary reason for using aluminum. And the reason you don't use steel is because steel's malleable, and in a crash, it doesn't break away properly. It actually bends, and that puts the occupants in a SORB kind of situation in jeopardy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see anything else here. Do you?
The
carbon fiber.
Yeah, the one thing is we saw this, and I was kind of surprised to see this. They've got a carbon shield. Looks like at the leading edge of the battery pack, supplemented by a steel structure above it, which is probably decking that front suspension module where this control arm's tying into. But they went with carbon underneath, right? So it's interesting. It's a costly choice depending on how you do it. Depending on the volumes, it could actually be less costly, right? It's really volume and how you actually lay up the carbon fiber that's going to determine the cost.
Well, this would probably be sheet molded compound. I don't think they'd lay this up.
Right.
But anyway, it's kind of interesting. Next one. Okay, so here we are at the rear of the product, and Jordan pointed out something that surprised the daylights out of me because I wasn't aware of that feature, and this is for rear wheel steering. So you want to jump into that, Jordan?
Yeah, so this just caught my eye, right? And obviously we're now starting to get into Cybertruck territory in preparation for the vehicle arriving, but this is a ball joint. You only have a ball joint and a rear knuckle and a multi-link suspension like this if you've got to pivot that, right? So ball joints allow that knuckle to pivot. which is indicative that it is indeed four-wheel steer. So we've seen obviously the press images of this vehicle having the four-wheel steer, tight turning radius, but this is one of the enablers, right? So on the, it looks like the opposing side, they've got a steering rack unit that's probably tying into the top end of that knuckle and steering from the rear. So,
and this is basically just two stampings welded together.
Yeah.
It's light, cheap, and for this application, probably a perfect choice.
Yeah, the interesting thing going aluminum in the front, steel in the rear, we used to see folks do this back when there was differentials galore in different cars, right? All these rear-wheel drive applications where in the front they'd have an aluminum differential and in the rear they'd have a cast iron differential because they wanted better weight distribution. So we've seen that in a similar sense applied to rear suspension systems or cradles where if you don't have a good 50-50 weight distribution front to rear, you start to go to steel. But as Sandy pointed out, from a cost and a mass perspective, it's actually very surprising when you actually look at the data when comparing like suspension systems to like suspension systems. The stamped steel clamshell welded strategy, which is what they have here, is among the lightest and definitely least costly.
Yeah, it's usually a wash between aluminum and stamped steel. It's like I say, it's a perfect application for Sorb for aluminum in the front, and this is a perfect application here. Yep. So last thing while we're on this slide is the debate over whether that other shield is carbon fiber or not. It's a grainy picture, so it's hard to really tell.
Yeah, it's hard to see. It could be like a textile PET, which is great for MVH, but at the rear of the vehicle, that wouldn't make much sense, right? You're not going to get a whole lot of noise transmission going through the bed into the cab. But similar to the front, it does look like there's an ever so slight witness of a crosshatch, which would be that like SMC carbon perhaps. Yeah, but yeah, I'm interested to see what they did there. Overall, the carbon, it's good for like puncture resistance, definitely good for lightweighting and stiffness. But
great, yeah.
Right.
Any off-roading kind of an experience is going to be, that's going to give you a whole lot more protection if that is carbon fiber.
Sure.
Let's try the next one. So again, we're looking at, this is your air suspension system. It's kind of like a little bit more like upside down, sideways, whatever.
Right.
But at the end of the day, this is very, very similar to pretty much every one of the more modern of the trucks that are coming out. Everybody's going to air suspension. I mean, we worked on the Ram. That was the first one, I think. Yep. And on and on and on. Pretty much everybody's got it. Bar Rivian, the Rivian has it. And it gives you a lot of nice qualities. You can kneel, so you can bring the car down for getting in and out, bring it back up for different ride heights for off-roading, or when you're going fast on the expressway, you want to have as tight as you can to the ground.
Load leveling for
load
trailer.
Leveling, yeah, for trailers, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. And then the other, you know, sort of marquee off-roading element here is the shield around the bag, right? You get a puncture in that bag, you're going to go from a really nice ride to a really bad ride very quickly.
Or no ride
or
at
no
all.
ride, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's try the next one. It's like a little bit more of the same. I don't see anything here that jumps right out at me.
Yeah, just more parts to the strut, right? So this on the side here, part of the adaptive nature of the air, right? So often these will be either vents, right, one-way valves, things like that to allow air in and out. But one thing did catch my eye, and if you go back to the other image, yeah, right here we see a glimpse of some of those giant, beautiful castings that we always point out, right? So
that's probably part of the Giga casting. Well, it's hard to say, but that it's part of the Giga casting. Whether it's front or rear or not, I don't know. But
and then I think the last thing that caught my eye is these orange cables, right? So these are probably the high voltage cables running likely from inverter to battery, or maybe the charge cables. It's hard to get a grasp on the packaging here. But the thing that I find interesting is we've got an airbag here. There's an aluminum shield around it. We've got high voltage cables running underbody. Most OEMs out there would cover this completely. They would shield it, especially in an off-road application.
I'm looking at this. I don't know whether somebody took a shield off or something, but that's obviously a track for the for the high voltage. I'm wondering.
There might be a stud on the body, right? Often these get pushed over, so the stud
But there's
goes
no
through.
nut or anything.
Yeah.
We would have seen something. Anyhow, at the end of the day, there might be more going on here, or we think that this is definitely a prototype. And sometimes prototypes don't they don't get all of the parts. So anyway, let's try the next one. Oh, we already hear next one. Okay, so this, I'll go ahead. You can.
Yeah, so what it looks like, and obviously this is grainy, doesn't even do it justice, but this photo looks like it's in the rear suspension, and this is either like a camber link or a toe link, or what more
camber.
Specifically,
Yeah.
it's probably the rear tie rod. So when we talk about the rear steering system, this is likely the rear tie rod. You see you've got these what are called jam nuts on either side, and then in the center here, as you rotate this one direction, it'll bring these two closer. Rotate it the other direction, it'll separate them out. So as you're aligning, or you want different properties from your suspension geometries, this is going to help with that. And then the jam nuts, once you get it where you want it, cinch those down like the front, and they're not going anywhere.
So the one thing that's unique about this type of a product, it's got right and left-hand threads. So on one side you'll have a normal thread, the other side is going to have a left-hand thread. And the left-hand thread will allow you, when you're cranking that center, so that's what makes it go in and out. So, yeah. Next one. And
that's a
here
better
we are.
picture
That's
of
a
it.
better picture of the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, going into that ball joint like we talked about, aluminum knuckles.
Right. Next.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yep.
Well, there you go. Okay, so that's our little assessment on what's going on with the pictures here of the CyberTruck. Stay tuned for more Monroe Live with hopefully Jordan and I talking about something even more exciting than this. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.